Take two.
Am I centered?
Yes.
All right.
Have you initiated any new programs here, such as public history, Model UN?
Yeah, a couple of things, maybe more, I don't know. One of those was the Social Studies Day. It started off as a social studies colloquium as a way of trying to get high school teachers on campus to get them to think favorably of us, so they would send us their students. And that morphed into Social Studies Day, which has our faculty and sometimes others talking to classes of local high school students. Sometimes, I think this next one we have about 100 people coming from 2 high schools, 3 or 4 teachers, and then 98 students or something like that. So that's one of the programs I started here. Sport history, I suppose. So that's a big one.
Okay. And so did you prefer teaching with the quarter system, or did you prefer the semesters?
I like the quarters because before I came here I was a teacher in the public schools, and so my natural rhythm was the quarter system. But since we've gone to semesters, I guess I don't mind it. The quarter system was nice in that you had something new every 10 weeks. Some people didn't like it for that reason, but I that was my natural way of doing things. But the semester system is okay.
Okay. So what role did the department itself have in general education when you arrived?
Well, when I first came here, general education included 2 courses of Western civilization for all students. For all arts and sciences students. I think the pharmacists had to take only 1.
Okay.
So that brought a lot of students in here. When the general education changed, that dropped out, and we went to a sort of choosing from a menu of courses. You still have to take science and math and writing seminar, but now with the history, philosophy, religion, and let's see, there's another department in there. You have to take 3 courses from those 4 majors. So we're fighting it out with other departments for students. And we're doing okay, but still not the same sort of thing that we had done.
Okay.
Wasn't there a question earlier there? I was just answering it, and maybe after this, how the students had changed.
Let's see. Maybe how the major changed that you.
Yes, that was the one I was answering. How the major changed since
Okay.
I've been here. Well, as I said, we've had to drop some classes like cultural anthropology because we have no one to teach that. When I first arrived here, history and social studies were separate. They weren't meshed together. That's one of the changes I've made since I was here with the department, is that now once you finish the social studies degree or the major, you also have a second major in history. It's built into the social studies. Dr. Lomax and I worked on doing that, so it would be easier to get that second major. The size of the major hasn't changed much. Some of the content is we've shifted away from Professor Shuck's U.S. history classes to my history classes, just so I can keep an eye on my majors that first year and then second year whenever they take them. That always helps. Let's see, what other changes have we made? We've tried to make some changes to make it easier when you take the Ohio assessment of it for educators. Adding world civilization rather than Western civilization. I think we've cut the number of courses from economics from 2 to 1, unfortunately. And anything we cut out of the social studies major like one course of economics or cultural anthropology is too bad, because those are valuable courses, but we have to try to keep the major manageable. We have, but still it's difficult. So in adding history courses so that you would have the history major when you graduated with social studies, we've had to make some choices and cut some courses. All right.
Okay. Let's see. Should a student take a course from one of the L's?
That's a question for Dr. Laughlin. I put that in there just to tweak them. Of course they should take a course from the L's. They're interesting courses. They're not that hard of graders. People do pass their classes. That's just some sort of a campus. What's it called? Something myth.
Urban myth.
Urban myth. There you go. See, you're not that bad, are you?
I would like to think that at General Electric, progress is my most important product.
No, those courses are very interesting. You should take courses from the L's. You can't take a course from Ludani anymore because he's gone. He's retired. But Laughlin and Lomax, especially Lomax, since it's his last semester here, next semester. I got you into historiography, didn't I?
You did.
All right, good. Yeah, you need to take courses from them. Good stuff.
All right.
So don't be afraid.
All right. Have expectations for tenure or the promotion of tenure faculty changed over the years?
Yeah, they have. When I first got here, teaching was pretty much it. Now, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we are expected to do some research and scholarship. That is something we have to do. I mean, it was always there as a part of tenure and promotion, but now it is emphasized more.
Okay.
Publication.
All right. What do you remember from the Western Civ series?
Well, the Western Civ series was pretty good. We brought in outside speakers. We had a time from I think 3 to 4 on Tuesday afternoons or something like that, blocked off for our students. They couldn't have another class during that time. Originally, it must have been several times a quarter that they had speakers come in, but I think it was only maybe twice a quarter when we last had it. And so we brought in speakers from wherever we could find them. Sometimes they were ONU professors, sometimes they were from off campus. For instance, we had Dr. Waters' brother-in-law, who was a serving military officer, who talked about sequential art, comic books in other words. That was a good one. Let's see, who else did we have? Dr. Mager talked about Darwin and evolution, the history of that. So we just tried to get people to talk about some feature of whatever we were talking about in Western Civilization 1 or 2. And so toward the end there, the last 2 or 3 years, I had to help find speakers. I think Waters and I were the junior historians, so they dumped that on us, but it was fun. It almost cost me my job once. I brought in a speaker from Miami of Ohio who had written about a very good book on the the French and Indian War. But unbeknownst to me, he and Dr. Wilson, the head of the department at the time, didn't like each other. And so she bring the guy on campus, and she wasn't happy with me at that point. But it was a good time, yeah. the Civ series.
Okay.
I think we should try to get something like that going with American history and politics.
That's a good idea. So tell me some memories that you have about your colleagues, past or present.
Well, like I said, Ludani scared me at my interview, saying sports history is not important and that sort of thing. But the one thing I remember is that we get along pretty well in here. We don't always agree on everything, but we always manage to get along. We haven't, done a Preston Brooks on Charles Sumner here, the guy who caned the other one in the well of the United States Senate. So we do get along well, and that helps. And everybody tends to pitch in together to work with each other, whatever needs to be done. It's a small department, so we have a lot of things that need to be done, and we pitch in together. That's all I can't remember any funny stories right off the top of my head. But there you go.
All right.
That's a tough question. Lomax struggled with that too.
Well, how about some memories of your students that you've taught over the years?
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of good teachers that have gone out into the world. One student I remember in particular, probably a lot of people remember him, Jared Hardesty. He wasn't a social studies major, a history major. He was a history major, but my first quarter here, he was a freshman then, and he was recommending books I should read to me. And then I later took Jared and Justin Dickerson to the the Ohio Valley Historical Conference, and that was a blast, taking them to a professional conference, and they did a good job. We presented, I think, Lomax and Waters, we were presenting on Cuba, and the two students, Hardesty and Dickerson, had been in Cuba, and I visited them down there, which was a blast. It was nice to go to Cuba. But we were presenting on Cuba, and I think one person came to our presentation. There were 5 of us from ONU who were presenting, and one person in the crowd. So, but still, it was fun.
Yeah.
Let me see. Trey Jones, who was a social studies major, great guy. One day, though, just to show how full service our department is, one day he came up here. I think I had a meeting with him, but he came back after the meeting and said, "Geez, I locked myself out of my apartment." And so I went down and helped him pry open one of his windows so he could get into his apartment. Let's see if I can think of anybody in particular. The social studies students have been pretty fun to work with. Joy Kessler King. And there's a few that have gotten away. Andrew Adamus was social studies until the weekend seminar. And I think Mike Fox and Rick Ingold might have teased him so much about being from Pennsylvania that he decided to drop social studies. I don't think that's the reason. They just did at that weekend seminar. But he dropped social studies and went into museum studies and public history. And he did pretty well. Of course, when he got to his museum job, he was working with kids, so you can't escape. Caitlin Cagley was one of the better student teachers we've had, but she was, "I don't want to teach, I'm just doing this for safety." And she went off to graduate school at Ooey Pooey, Indiana University, Pennsylvania University, something like that. Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. And she's now working at COSI. She was a very good teacher, but she was also working with student volunteers. So even when the social studies people have dropped out of teaching, the teaching path, they're still working with kids. So it's impossible to get away from.
Okay. Do you have a favorite memory of your time here?
Geez, I made these questions. I should be able to answer them. Favorite memory of my time here. Well, I mean, publishing a book, that's good. My book on French football, Le Football, the history of American football in France, that's a good time. Some of the classes I've taught have been outstanding. It's just a good place to work and a good group of people to work with. So that's not a specific memory. Publishing the book, Sometimes the weekend seminars have been pretty cool. There's always a good time. That's probably the highlight because it's everything crammed into a weekend, and of course, then it's always nice to interact with students, and it's always nice to go down the hill to the private teachers' quarters.
All right. Well, thank you for the interview. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I can't think of anything right at the moment.
All right.
And
Sounds
since
good.
it's my class, I can add stuff later.
All right.